It started with a smell. Not perfume, not cologne, no, something more subtle. Cigarettes. Old ones. The kind that cling to clothes and pillows like a memory someone's trying to bury. My wife never smoked. I don't either. Neither does our daughter. So why the hell did Kayla's apartment reek of stale Marlboros when I went over to drop off a lamp she left in the garage? It was supposed to be quick. I was in the area, figured I'd be a decent dad. I still had her spare keys from when she moved out last year. The door was unlocked. That struck me first. Then the shoes, big, heavy boots by the door. Men's boots. Definitely not Kayla's. And definitely not mine. The living room was lived in. Not by a 22-year-old woman, but by someone older. Beer bottles lined up like trophies on the coffee table. A jacket tossed over the back of the couch. Dishes in the sink. There was even a razor charging in the bathroom. Kayla was supposed to be staying with her college friend Rachel while her place was being treated for mold. That's what my wife told me. I hadn't seen Kayla in weeks, said she was busy, overworked, adjusting to post-grad life. I was standing in the kitchen, staring at a mug that said #OneDad and definitely wasn't Kayla's when the front door opened behind me. It wasn't Kayla. It was my wife. She froze. I froze. She was in jeans and a hoodie, no makeup, hair up in a messy bun. Comfortable. Familiar. Homey. Except this wasn't home and she didn't look shocked to see me, she looked caught. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. What is this? I asked, calm. Dead calm. She tried to smile. Dan. I was just checking on the place. Whose boots are those? She didn't look down. Didn't need to. Kayla's boyfriend. Kayla doesn't have a boyfriend. Silence. And then something shifted in her face. Something cold and calculating, like she realized she couldn't keep the mask on anymore. You shouldn't be here, she said. Just like that. Not even angry. Just dismissive. Like I was interrupting something she didn't think I had the right to see. My stomach flipped. I brought her lamp, I said, still standing there like an idiot holding that stupid silver lamp with pink polka dots on the base. My wife walked past me like I was invisible, set her purse on the table, and picked up the remote. You need to leave. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me who's been living here. She sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. It's none of your business, Dan. That's when my phone buzzed. It was Kayla. Perfect timing. I picked up. Hey, sweetie. Just out of curiosity, you said you're at Rachel's, right? Yeah? Why? Just wondering. How's the fumigation going? There was a pause. What fumigation? My wife froze. Her hand was halfway to the TV remote, but it didn't move an inch. You said your apartment had mold, I continued, eyes on her now. She wasn't breathing. No? Mom just said she needed it for some kind of short-term rental thing. She said it'd help us out financially, so I said okay. Wait, are you there? I didn't answer. My wife did, though. She snatched the phone from my hand and hung up. That's when I saw it, the look. Not guilt. Not panic. Indifference. She didn't care that she'd been caught. She wasn't even scared. She just looked, done pretending. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the lamp through the window. But I didn't. I left. Walked out into the sun with that stupid lamp still in my hand, feeling like the last person at a party that ended weeks ago. What the hell was going on? And how deep did this go? I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. I sat in my car for 2 hours outside the house, staring at the driveway, wondering if she'd come back or if she was still at the apartment, his apartment now, apparently. Our house, the one we built together, suddenly felt like a hotel lobby. I couldn't breathe in it. The silence inside screamed. Around 3 a.m., I went into the garage, opened the cabinets where we kept old tax returns and paperwork. I needed to see something, anything that could explain how this had slipped under me. That's when I found the lease. It was under a stack of junk mail, neatly folded. A rental agreement signed 2 months ago. My wife's signature. The tenant's name? Tyler Monroe. And that name hit me like a bat to the chest. Tyler Monroe. Her ex. The one she used to call a mistake. The guy she said had no direction and could never grow up. The one she'd delete messages from, block and unblock, until I told her it made me uncomfortable. She promised he was just noise from the past. Dead weight. And now she had him living in our daughter's apartment? This wasn't an affair. This wasn't a moment of weakness. She planned this. She played landlord to her ex and lied about it every single day she kissed me goodbye. By morning, I wasn't angry, I was electric. My thoughts were sprinting in every direction. Was Kayla safe? Did she know? What was she told? Why hide it if it was just financial help? And the worst thought of all, how long has this really been going on? I called Kayla again. Told her to meet me at a diner. Neutral ground. She showed up in a hoodie and no makeup. Clearly confused. Clearly worried. I didn't ease into it. I went to your apartment. Her face changed. She sat back slowly. Okay. There's a man living there. Tyler Monroe. Her mouth opened, then shut. She looked down. Mom told me you knew. I nearly laughed. Knew what? That she was renting it out to someone she used to know. She said you agreed it was a smart move. That it'd help cover some of the money you lost on the car repairs. I almost choked. Car repairs? The repairs I paid out of my savings because our joint account had mysteriously come up short? I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just sat there and watched Kayla piece it together, one broken lie at a time. Then she said something that flipped the entire game. Dad, you said she was at a conference last month, right? In Dallas? Yeah. She wasn't. She looked around, leaned in. She stayed at the apartment. With him. For almost 3 weeks. And that's when the floor dropped out. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just cheating. It was a life. A whole alternate existence she was curating behind my back. She'd used my daughter's space, my money, and my trust to build it. She wore 2 faces. 2 stories. 2 realities. I left the diner without finishing my coffee. I couldn't speak. I didn't cry. But I made a promise, walking to my car, I was going to burn down every piece of that illusion she built. Not with fire. With truth. The next step was simple, brutal, but simple. I needed proof. Not just bits and pieces. Not assumptions or half-truths. I wanted the whole thing laid out in front of me like a crime scene, every fingerprint of her double life exposed. Because if she could manipulate our daughter and stand in front of me in our kitchen like nothing was wrong while she was playing house with him, then I needed to stop thinking like a husband and start thinking like someone solving a puzzle built to deceive. I took a day off work. No explanation. Just left my phone on silent and drove. Straight to Kayla's apartment, this time during business hours when I figured he wouldn't be home. I knocked, and when no one answered, I used the key Kayla gave me 2 years ago, the one she forgot I still had. The place was eerily quiet. Clean, too clean. Like someone had prepared it for a showing. But there were signs, subtle things, 2 coffee mugs drying by the sink. A man's deodorant on the bathroom shelf. A pair of earbuds tangled around a phone charger plugged in near the bed. And then I found it. On the desk in the small office space, beneath a stack of unpaid utility bills addressed to Tyler Monroe, was a printed itinerary. 3 weeks. No flights. No hotels. Just dates, destinations, and notes in her handwriting. Meal prep Mon Awed/Friday. Check his meds refill if needed. Gym together? Order groceries before Sunday. My hands were shaking. It wasn't just visits. She lived there. They had a routine. A schedule. She was managing him like some twisted domestic project. And then I saw something else tucked in a notebook she'd clearly been using, a printed picture of her and Tyler. Taken on the balcony. Her in a sundress, barefoot. Him in a t-shirt I didn't recognize, his hand around her waist like he owned her. Her smile was soft, relaxed, intimate. A version of her face I hadn't seen in years. I felt sick. Not because of the image. But because it was so normal. So practiced. As if my life was the side project and this was the real thing she'd been building. I took the photo. And the itinerary. I left everything else exactly as I found it. Back in my car, I stared at the photo for a long time before calling her. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice all businesslike, distracted. Hey, what's up? I'm in the middle of something. Hope it's not meal prep day. Silence. Then calmly, where are you? In the truth. Another pause. I think we should talk tonight, she said, cold, professional. No panic. No emotion. Like we were setting a meeting to go over spreadsheets. Tonight works. Your place or Tyler's? I hung up. That evening, she came home early. Didn't speak. Just walked into the kitchen, poured herself a glass of wine, and leaned against the counter like she was waiting for a client. She didn't ask how much I knew. She didn't bother with excuses. So I showed her the photo. Put it right on the counter. Nothing. Then I dropped the itinerary. Still nothing. No tears. No apologies. Just her mouth twisting into something between contempt and boredom. You really don't get it, do you? She finally said. Get what? That I outgrew you a long time ago. That sentence hit harder than any lie. Because it was the first time she told the truth. And it wasn't even a confession. It was a warning. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My mouth was dry, like my body was still trying to process the sentence. I outgrew you. 7 syllables, but they weighed more than anything she'd ever said in our 17 years together. She didn't just cheat, she dismissed me. Erased me from her life while still using my name, my house, my money, and my child to build a second one. She walked past me as calm as someone turning off the lights before bed. She poured more wine, sipped it slowly, didn't even glance in my direction. You've got everything you need, right? She said, I still on the floor. Photos, dates, a nice little folder of betrayal? You think this is about paperwork? She turned finally. What else is there left to say? You figured it out. Congratulations. So now what? You want to cry together? You want me to beg? I stepped closer. My heart wasn't racing. It had gone quiet. Frozen. I was watching a woman I once loved strip off every mask and reveal not pain, not guilt, contempt. You lied to her daughter, I said, low, measured. You dragged her into this. You turned her first apartment into a damn motel for your ex and used her name to cover for it. Do you even care what this has done to her? She laughed. Not a big laugh. A tired, annoyed one. Like she couldn't believe I was still talking about emotions. She'll be fine, she said. She's an adult. She'll figure out that people don't stay in fairy tales forever. The sooner she learns that, the better. I took a breath, stepped back, clenched my fists to keep from losing it completely. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in the pit of my stomach since Kayla told me about the 3-week conference. How long? She didn't blink. 6 months. I nodded slowly. That meant she'd started this before Kayla moved out. Before the apartment was even fully furnished. She had probably been planning this while sitting at our dinner table, acting like she was picking out paint swatches for Kayla's bedroom. And before that? She paused. I waited. A year. On and off. So over a year of secret meetings, made-up work trips, lies about late office hours. All while I was holding our life together, thinking we were just in a slow season. She was never distant because she was stressed. She was splitting her time between 2 homes. Why? I asked. Not out of weakness. I needed to hear it. She gave the cruelest answer of all. Because he listens. Because with him, I don't feel like I'm trapped in a dead rhythm. Repeating the same conversations, hearing the same questions. With him, I'm not just a wife or a mother or some predictable checklist. It was like she was blaming me for being stable. I didn't speak. I walked into her bedroom, took the duffel bag I'd thrown together the night before, and started unzipping drawers. She followed, arms crossed. That's it? You're just leaving. You already left, I said, not looking at her. You just forgot to take your body with you. As I zipped the bag shut, she said something that stopped me at the door. You think you're the victim, but you're just the part one outgrew the slowest. I looked at her one last time. Not the woman I married. Not the woman who gave birth to our daughter. Just a stranger in familiar skin. You'll regret this, I said, steady. She smiled. That same tired smirk. No, I won't. And maybe she believed that. Maybe in her cold, rewritten version of our history, she thinks she won. But I hadn't even started yet. I didn't go far that night, just a cheap hotel near the highway. A sterile room with yellow lighting and a window facing the back of a gas station. It was perfect. Quiet. Empty. No shared memories clinging to the furniture like ghosts. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall until sunrise. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something inside me was unraveling fast. She didn't just cheat. She transferred ownership of herself to another life and handed me the receipt like I should thank her for the transaction. And I kept thinking about how calmly she admitted it. No shame. No fear. Like this was just overdue maintenance, something we should have both expected eventually. By the time morning came, I had a plan. Not revenge. Reclamation. I wasn't going to drown in the wreckage of her choices. I was going to take back what she'd stolen from me, my sense of reality, my confidence, the narrative she twisted until I doubted my own instincts. I called Kayla first. Told her everything. The real story. The man in her apartment wasn't just a random renter. He was the same man who used to pick her mother up in high school, who once punched a hole in our drywall during a brief reconnection 8 years ago when they'd exchanged a few emails. She went silent. I let her sit with it. Then she asked, "Did Mom know I'd find out?" "She didn't care," I said. Kayla's voice cracked. "She told me this was about helping me. She said you'd never understand. She said the same thing about you." That was the moment everything flipped for Kayla. Her voice hardened. "He's out by tonight. I'll get my friends. We'll pack up his stuff. I'm taking my place back." I didn't tell her to. I didn't ask her to. That was her move, her way of clawing back her reality from the lies. Then came the harder part. I started pulling every thread. Bank statements, phone records, old shared logins she forgot I still had access to. I found hotel receipts dating back further than she admitted, some billed under her name, some under his. Flights too. I even found one itinerary where she booked a double trip for a friend's birthday, claimed it was a girls' weekend, and instead took him to Nashville. Everything she said during those weekends came back to me now: poor cell service, early meetings, too tired to FaceTime. And through it all, I realized something cruel. She wanted me to find out. Not obviously. Not yet. But in the way she left crumbs, the way she stopped caring about plugging the holes in her stories, the way she stood in the kitchen and looked me in the eye without blinking when I confronted her. She was done with the life we had, but she was too much of a coward to end it clean. So she built a bomb and sat on it, waiting for me to stumble across the trigger. And now that I had, she thought I'd fall apart. She thought I'd fade out of the picture like some exhausted placeholder she'd finally outgrown. She didn't expect me to move with purpose. I made an appointment with a divorce attorney that same afternoon. Not a cheap one. A sharp one. One whose reviews said words like ruthless, surgical, fast. I brought everything. I handed over copies of leases, photos, receipts, the itinerary, even screenshots of her texts to Kayla, the ones where she told her not to mention the apartment stuff to Dad because it'll make him anxious. The attorney flipped through the file, expression flat but eyes alert. When she finished, she tapped the table with one perfectly manicured nail. "You're sitting on a demolition site. Let's do this right." I wasn't afraid. I was finally wide awake. When the divorce papers hit her inbox, I was already gone. I'd moved out 2 days earlier, set up temporary space in a small apartment across town, and frozen the joint accounts. Not out of spite, out of strategy. Every step I took was calculated. Clean. Legal. Undeniable. She wanted war without saying it out loud? Fine. But I wasn't coming at her with rage. I was coming with receipts. She didn't call. She didn't text. Not even a passive-aggressive emoji. Just silence. Like I was a subscription she'd finally canceled. That told me everything I needed to know. There was no version of this where she thought she owed me dignity. But what she hadn't anticipated was Kayla. Our daughter turned out to be the crack in her whole blueprint. The one variable she couldn't control or manipulate. She didn't expect Kayla to flip so quickly, to move Tyler's belongings out with friends from college and text her mother a cold, 2-line message. "The apartment is mine. Don't come here again. We're done until you tell me the full truth." The silence between them exploded after that. I stayed out of it, but Kayla didn't. She started sending me screenshots. Long rants from her mother. Emotional blackmail masked as disappointment. She told Kayla I turned her against her. That I was exaggerating everything. That Tyler was just staying temporarily during a rough patch and that she felt sorry for him. Kayla asked her point blank, "Did you ever love Dad while this was happening?" Her reply? "Love is complicated. You'll understand when you're older." Complicated. That was her favorite word now. She used it like a blanket, trying to cover what was just a pile of conscious choices. Not mistakes. Not slips. Decisions. Meanwhile, Tyler wasn't as invisible as she thought. After Kayla kicked him out, he messaged her. Twice. First just asking for his things. Then oddly saying he hoped they could talk, just the two of them, because maybe someday she'd understand. Understand what? That he was living in a young woman's apartment while playing house with her mother behind everyone's back? I called him. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I said one sentence. If you ever contact my daughter again, the next voice you hear will be a lawyer's. He hung up without a word. 2 days later, my wife broke her silence. I was coming back to the apartment late, groceries in one hand, keys in the other, when I saw her waiting at my door. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was tied back. No jewelry. She looked stripped of all her armor, but not broken. Just tired. She didn't ask to come in. She just said, "You didn't have to go this far." I stared at her, and I don't know what came over me, but I laughed. Not loud, not cruel, just disbelief. This far? You used our daughter as a prop in your secret life. You made her home into a hideout. You lied to both of us for over a year. You don't get to tell me what too far looks like. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. I thought we could do this quietly. There's nothing quiet about betrayal. Then she said it. The one thing she'd held back until now. I didn't want to leave you because I was scared you'd fall apart. I walked past her, unlocked the door, stood in the frame. No, you didn't leave me because you thought I'd make it easy for you to keep both lives. She didn't follow me in. And just like that, I closed the door. 2 weeks passed. No more visits. No more late-night calls. Just emails from her attorney, dry, procedural, full of bullet points, and please review the attached. We were splitting the assets. The house would be sold. She wanted her share. She claimed she contributed equally even though I'd paid off more than half of that mortgage with savings from my parents' inheritance. She wanted the car too, the one registered in my name. She wanted everything except responsibility. But I was ready for this part. I had kept records, documents, screenshots, a timeline so airtight her lawyer barely tried to contest it. They wanted to wrap it fast. She didn't want this dragged out in court because she knew how it would look if it went public. A mother secretly moves her ex-boyfriend into her daughter's apartment while lying to both husband and child for over a year. That's not messy. That's nuclear. But while the legal side churned forward, the real damage was unfolding off the record between her and Kayla. I didn't push Kayla to take sides. I didn't need to. She was watching her mother unravel all on her own. Every time they spoke, it ended in silence or slammed doors. The woman she once admired was now a stranger. Worse, a user. It was during one of those nights when Kayla came over with Thai food and sad eyes that she dropped the final piece of the puzzle. She told me she never meant for it to go this far, she said, picking at her rice. But that she felt alive again with him. She said she thought the affair would end eventually, but then she liked how it made her feel. Like she was someone again. She was someone, I said. She just didn't want to be this someone anymore. She said she didn't expect you to react so cold. I blinked. Cold? Kayla nodded. She said you were always too calm. That even now you're not screaming, you're not trying to win her back. Not even angry. I laughed. This time bitterly. You know what's funny, Kayla? For a long time I thought I was the boring one. The safe option. The steady hand. But now I realize she mistook my respect for disinterest. My silence for apathy. She wanted fireworks. But she didn't care who got burned. Kayla didn't reply. She just nodded slowly and went back to her food. The next day I got a letter. Handwritten. Not typed. No envelope. Just left under my door. It was from her. She said she didn't recognize me anymore. Said I'd become someone vindictive. Someone who twisted the narrative to suit your version of events. That if I had loved her like I claimed, I would have fought for us instead of walking away. She ended it with a line that made my skin crawl. One day, when your bitterness fades, you'll remember the good parts. And you'll miss me. She still thought this was about bitterness. She still believed I left because I was wounded. She didn't understand that what I'd lost wasn't just love. It was respect. And once that's gone, there's no version of us left to fight for. I didn't respond. Not to the letter. Not to the last-minute apology email she sent 2 days later. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she lost control of the story. But I had my story now, and I wasn't letting her rewrite a single page. The house sold faster than either of us expected. The market was hot, and people didn't care about the backstory. They just saw a freshly painted 4-bedroom with charm and great bones. I watched strangers walk through our kitchen, compliment the backsplash we picked out during our 5th anniversary, and I felt nothing. No nostalgia, no ache, just a kind of relief, like someone finally opened a window in a smoke-filled room. We signed the closing paperwork separately. She sat in a different room with her lawyer. I didn't see her. I didn't want to. But afterward, I heard she lingered in the driveway for a while, sitting in her car, staring at the porch like it might blink and ask her to come home. It didn't. Meanwhile, Tyler vanished, at least from our lives. Kayla hadn't heard from him since the day she threw out his stuff. No more texts. No more maybe someday messages. It was like the apartment had been the last link keeping him tied to her, and once that was gone, so was he. But the damage he helped orchestrate stayed. It was Kayla who uncovered the final detail I hadn't known. She found it while checking the old mailbox just before we officially turned over the keys. A letter from a collections agency addressed to him delivered to her apartment. She called me immediately, panicked. I went with her the next morning to check. The letter claimed over $3,000 in unpaid utility bills, some of them dating back 6 months. In her name. Apparently, while she was living with a friend, thinking her mom had things handled, they were letting unpaid bills pile up. He used the electricity, water, internet. She got the debt. When I told my ex-wife about it calmly, through email, she didn't apologize. She didn't offer to pay. She replied with 6 words: she'll learn how the world works. I stared at the screen, heart frozen. No guilt. No remorse. Just a sick, condescending arrogance wrapped in parental indifference. That night, I went back through my old journal. I hadn't touched it in over a year. Most of it was mundane, grocery lists, reminders, notes about repairs, but buried in the middle, dated roughly 10 months ago, I found a line I barely remembered writing: something feels off. I don't know what it is, but she's watching her phone more than she watches me. I read it over and over. I'd written it like a question, like I didn't want to accuse her. Back then, I still trusted her enough to doubt myself first. Now I know better. Trust isn't something that breaks all at once. It erodes. Quietly. 1,000 small cuts. A missed call here. A strange excuse there. A flash of anger that doesn't make sense. And by the time you notice you're bleeding, it's already too late. But here's the thing. Once you see someone's true nature, you can't unsee it. She wasn't a victim of circumstance. She wasn't lost. She made choices. Long before Tyler moved in, long before Kayla's apartment became her secret hideaway, she was slowly moving out of our life, one excuse at a time. And now that she was gone, I wasn't broken. I was clean. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday. No ceremony. No big blowout in court. Just a few signatures, a neutral handshake from my attorney, and a digital copy of the final decree emailed to me at 4:17 p.m. It was surreal how quiet it all was. For something that took apart nearly 2 decades of shared life, it landed in my inbox like a delivery receipt from Amazon. I stared at it for a while. Not out of hesitation, just the weight of it. The formality. The finality. Then I closed my laptop, stood up, and opened every window in the apartment. Fresh air poured in. First time in months I felt like I could breathe without checking if the air had been pre-filtered by someone else's lies. I thought I'd feel hollow. I didn't. What I felt was something close to freedom but heavier authority. Like I'd taken my name back from someone who'd been signing it while living a second life. She didn't message me that day. Not a text. Not a hope you're okay. Nothing. Of course she didn't. In her head, I was probably the villain now. Cold. Unemotional. The man who didn't fight for her when she betrayed him and demanded his silence in return. I imagine she tells her friends I overreacted. That I held a grudge. That I couldn't handle change. But I don't need to correct her version anymore. Because she doesn't own my story. That weekend Kayla came over. She brought a small houseplant and set it on the windowsill. Said it was for new chapters. I didn't ask if she still talked to her mother. I didn't have to. The answer was written in the way she looked at me now, not as the backup parent, but as the one who didn't lie. We sat on the floor and split a pizza, and for the first time since this entire thing began, we laughed. Not forced, not awkward, genuine, from the gut laughter. About stupid things. Her coworker who keeps mispronouncing quinoa. My terrible attempt at setting up the Wi-Fi. Just life. Real life. At one point, she got quiet and said, "You seem different now." I am. Better. I thought about it. No. Not better. Just real. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a walk. The kind of walk people take in movies after their lives collapse but they're starting to rebuild. Except there was no music. No metaphor. Just me. Moving forward. I passed a park we used to take Kayla to. The bench was still there. I stopped. Saturday. Watched a kid try to feed a squirrel and fail miserably. His dad laughed, took a photo. That's when I realized something. My life wasn't on pause. It wasn't waiting to be fixed or redeemed. It was already mine again. Unfiltered. Untangled. Honest. And that was everything. Months passed. Not in a blur, but in sharp, focused moments. There was no dramatic healing montage, no overnight transformation. Just the slow, deliberate process of rebuilding a life that had been quietly hollowed out long before it cracked in half. Every small routine became an act of reclamation, cooking for one, folding laundry without anyone else's socks showing up, sleeping diagonally across a bed that no longer carried her shape. The silence stopped feeling like absence. It started feeling like peace. The last time I saw her, it wasn't planned. I was at a bookstore downtown, something I'd started doing again. She always hated how long I could linger, how I'd flip through 5 books and still leave without buying one. She said it was a waste of time. This time I bought 2. I was heading out, coffee in one hand, bag in the other, when I saw her. She was across the street, walking with someone, couldn't tell if it was a friend or a date. She looked different. Lighter, maybe? Still polished. Still composed. She didn't see me. I didn't wave. I didn't duck either. I just stood there, watching for a moment, and then I turned and kept walking. Not out of spite. Just, no need. There was nothing left to say. No final words. No second confrontation. Just the natural conclusion of 2 lives that once overlapped and now simply ran parallel. Later that night, I opened my laptop and started writing down everything. Not for revenge. Not even for closure. For clarity. Because when you've lived through a story where the truth was so carefully edited, sometimes the only way to fully understand it is to tell it yourself. And here's what I learned: if anyone ever needs the warning, the scariest kind of betrayal doesn't come with yelling or dramatic confessions. It comes dressed in normalcy. It cooks dinner, pays bills, smiles in photos. It holds your hand while hiding a second phone in its purse. It makes you doubt your gut, second-guess your memory, question your own reality. If someone can live a double life with you right there beside them every day, what you had was never shared. You were just an extra in their secret movie. But there's power in discovery. Not because you caught them, but because you saw it and survived it. You woke up. You acted. You didn't settle for being the quiet casualty. So if you're reading this, wondering if the pieces in your life don't quite fit anymore, trust yourself. Don't wait for the crash to confirm what you already feel. The truth may hurt, but it will never lie to you. She was the coldest storm I've ever walked through, but I came out the other side. Clear. Untangled.